All right. Well, for those of you that are sticking with track one, so I appreciate you guys for hanging in there. And sitting through, we're going to talk about reconnaissance. So another one of the areas that I'm very passionate about. So if you heard the industrial control talk earlier, that's definitely one of the main focuses and passions I have these days. And also reconnaissance. Penetration testing is something that I've been involved with for a very long time. And when we look at reconnaissance, really is that first phase of a penetration test that, and to me, it's one of the most, if not the most important phase of pen testing, maybe beside that we include writing the report, right, that we're going to turn around and deliver to the client at the end of an engagement. But this is actually based off of part of a section I have on reconnaissance in the 2-day pen test class that I teach about once a year. And so I actually took some of that content and put it into one of my Greenville Tech classes. So I actually have two different pen testing classes in the cybersecurity program that we have there, which is really exciting. So we have the first class or first course maps out basically to the Pen Test Plus, or think certified ethical hacker certifications. And then the second one is more, we talk about advanced pen testing, or part of it is more realistic pen testing. And not that Pen Test Plus doesn't do a good job of aligning with realistic content for the most part, but also getting realistic pen testing and kind of almost see it as how to prep to take the OSCP course as well. So to give students a head start on that. It's kind of like everything I wish I knew before taking the OSCP class. So and then some. So we'll talk about writing buffer overflows and manual exploitation. So I've added all of that to the 2-day pen test class as well, and removed some of the other sections. But so with QuickStart Recon, the idea is I'm a big fan of the 80-20 rule, right, or Pareto's principle, where depending on what we're looking at, right, we can always kind of bring up the 80-20 rule. If you work in business, right, if you maybe own your own business, they always talk about 80% of your profits come from 20% of your clients, which is an interesting way to look at it, right? Or if I'm doing a pen test, right, and I'm doing reconnaissance, that I think, well, 80% of the relative results, the results I need that relate to the target that I'm working with, right, comes from about 20% of the work. Or the way I look at it is, I can spend, let's say, 10 hours doing reconnaissance using a handful of tools like we're going to talk about here, to find probably really even 95% of the information that's out there. Could I spend another 10 or 20 hours or 40 hours finding more information? Sure. But the more time I spend, then it's a very little return on investment. And so it takes much longer to find little pieces of information that more than likely aren't going to pay off in the long run. So not to say don't do that if you have the time, but most of us aren't going to have the time, especially with performing penetration tests that we're under the gun, right? We only have a limited amount of time to get in and find what we're looking for, be able to exploit the target, gain access, and meet our objectives or our missions, and then turn around a report for our clients. And so, again, this talk really is, and it's part demo, and I realize also there's a lot of great other tools out there. So for those of you that are familiar with the tools, if you're using those tools, be sure to put them in the Discord channel. This is not meant to be a comprehensive list in any stretch of the imagination. If anything, right, it's supposed to be quite the opposite, right? Here's a few tools, right, that we can use to perform reconnaissance against an organization, maybe we should be also performing reconnaissance against our own organization to see what's exposed to the internet that we don't know. When I do pen tests for clients outside of my floor work, I've never had a client where I didn't find something that they weren't aware of, that they were not aware about. Maybe it's an old website that they spun up 10 years ago and they didn't realize it was still out there. Maybe it was the client that their system admin was hosting, their web server at his house instead of the data center that they thought they were paying for. Or maybe it is that industrial control system that you have connected directly to the internet. There's always something that an organization isn't aware about because they're not doing their own reconnaissance. So that's another idea behind this QuickStart, process, is that it can act as that little cheat sheet, right, to help organizations, right, and you working for your company to perform your own reconnaissance, right? When we talk about hack ourselves, right, to see, right, where our exposures are. So the first place we'll typically start is the target's main domain. And so, of course, I work at Floor. I know where all the proverbial skeletons are buried, at least the ones that have been buried in the last 10 years that I've worked with. I'm very familiar. I run vulnerability management and penetration testing and incident detection and response. So I know all of the systems that are connected to the internet, but we're always continually looking for new ones because somebody could turn something up in the environment and we wouldn't know about. We actually had an employee, it's probably about 2 years ago, that thought it would be great to stand up a Windows server in Amazon and expose remote desktop to the outside world. It was for a project, and that was something we caught within probably about 24 hours because we are doing reconnaissance on a regular basis. And so go shadow IT, right? So somebody was definitely, it was a corporate security policy violation issued for that, to say the least. Right? But anyways, so talking about reconnaissance, I always we do this in class, and we'll go through this exercise. You can see our BSides event dashboard for, but looking at, we'll always go to the Fortune 500 list. And just to get an idea of targets. Now you can look at, sure, small, medium-sized environments. There's just typically, it's kind of hit or miss whether they have a lot to actually look at. So it's a lot easier if you use a larger company. I don't like using Floor. We're still Fortune 200, but at the same time, it's one I'm very familiar with. So it's almost like cheating. We'll typically maybe pick, I've seen a couple of these. Any suggestions? Maybe off of this list? I'll just leave it here.
Don't do Wells Fargo because that one didn't have a lot of hits on the homework.
Okay. Hey, Sean. I see one of my students. But why don't I know somebody actually did Disney. I saw Disney in there.
That was me.
There's Hillary. So how about so Cisco? There's Cisco and then there's Cisco, which is funny because I used to know the gentleman that ran sales for all of Cisco, and we used to joke that he worked for this Cisco, which is the food distribution company. So we kept asking, hey, can you get us like some free cans of corn? He used to hate that.
Does if Amazon, I think Amazon owns Twitch, and Twitch is on the spotlight right now. You want to do Amazon?
You mean Twitch is on fire right now?
It's one of those that's too big though. Maybe Allstate. Like Allstate's my insurance provider. Let's look at that. Let's look at that one. And they're probably, and you can see, right, allstate.com comes up because I go and had to pay my insurance bill yesterday. It's the one I don't have on direct deposit or direct automatic payments, right? So we know we already have a domain name. The nice thing is most organizations have at least one main domain name that they focus with, right? Because that's their point of presence to everyone in the world on the internet, right? It's probably in social media, right? There's probably at allstate.com everywhere, and on all the social media platforms. All of the employee email addresses probably come from something at allstate.com. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't other domains out there, right? It just means that this is going to be our starting place. Like Floor, if you look at, my email address is at floor.com, but we actually have a lot of other domains that we use, like fdnet.com would be one that you would see if you perform reconnaissance against Floor. And it's a very popular domain for us to use on those external facing systems. But again, it's not one you're going to know about unless you're doing the reconnaissance itself, right? And I saw a charter yet. The ISPs can be tricky because you have the corporation and then you have the actual kind of internet backbone that they're responsible for and handing out. So for these types of conversations, it gets a little bit tricky. So that's why I decided not to go there. Right. But yeah, we're going to start with the main domain. And I know Allstate's not that exciting, but but yeah, we're looking for, we know at, right? Allstate.com is going to be used for employees, right? Again, it's that main starting point. Again, keep in the back of your mind, there could be other domains out there, right? And we want to also perform reconnaissance against those as we find them. But we'll focus on, again, as a starting point, the main domain itself, right? And so Dns Linux is a tool that I use a lot in doing, whether it's reconnaissance or in incident detection and response, where I want to find out, oh, here's an IP address that looks like it's attacking me, or maybe I have an outbound connection to an IP address and I wonder what the heck is that? Then I'll use Dns Linux. So let's go ahead and use Dns Linux. And probably some of you, if you have other sites out there that you use, definitely throw them into the chat channel, which are great. But in this case, we'll do allstate.com and just click search, right? And this is a starting point. We'll come back to Dns Linux for a couple of different things, because you can see in the search field, they can actually take domain names, IP addresses, and so you can see and version 4, version 6, and then autonomous system numbers that we're also going to be talking about. Right. And you can see that, okay, we found allstate.com. It's actually a fairly popular website on the internet, right? Fairly large company with a lot of users or a lot of clients. And then we can start looking at some of their DNS records, right? And do me a favor and use the Discord and not the Zoom chat, especially once I get into the demos. But so we can see the A records and then the AAA records. Right? So what's the AAA record for? Anybody want to throw it in Discord for a giveaway prize? Yeah, it's IP version 6. Don't put a question though, say it with conviction, right? Yeah, it's for IP version 6. So remember with a single like IP version 4, right, which is 32 bits long, right? IP version 6 is 4 times as long, so they thought they're being funny and quadruple A. Like, okay, I get it, right? Anyways, right, so we see a couple of records, right? And basically it's just saying, oh, this 167 address, right, is probably their main website. And what we can do is, the nice thing about Dns Linux, it says, hey, there's 2 different domains that are hosted on or associated with that IP address. And you can see, oh yeah, there's allstate.com, which is that main starting point. And now we already found another domain that we want to look at, because here's one called allstate-emarketing.com, right? That's something we didn't know about 30 seconds ago. And it's another domain that we can do further reconnaissance on and find out more information, because it could lead to other systems, and those systems could lead to services. And those services and applications could lead to vulnerabilities, and those vulnerabilities are what could lead us to gaining access to their network. So that's one of the great features of DNS Linux. I I love DNS Select, so we even have a use a paid account. In fact, actually, I think I have to renew it. But we can see, sure, there's the DNS servers for Allstate. Now, this is an interesting thing we're already seeing that we're going to come back and talk about. I don't want to jump too far ahead. And then we see the MX records, right? So these are mail servers. So if you're sending to anybody at allstate.com, you're sending to these IP addresses, but it's not servers hosted directly on the Allstate network, right? Because you see it's actually going through Proofpoint. So they're using Proofpoint for email security. And so, and then you can find some who is information down below. So you can see who is it registered to. So you can see there's some email addresses, this DSN, like dnsadmin@allstate.com. Here's a phone number, right? Here's an address, right? So we could probably look at, is this the same address as, well, look at, how about Allstate, corporate headquarters address, right? I think if you just do like Allstate, it will actually pop up their headquarters, right? And you can actually see, is this probably going to be a match for their corporate headquarters, which is going to be more important a little bit later on in our conversation. So this looks, I don't know if we actually got, usually they actually give you the address. I'm not, there's gonna, well, this address for Allstate headquarters. So 27775 Sanders, and well, there's 3075 Sanders. So we're in the right neighborhood, right? So yeah, it's definitely associated with Allstate. And again, there is a reason we're going to come back and want to try to physically tie in the IP addresses and the domain names to those locations. So we have the domain name. Again, we started to find other domain names, and we started to find physical locations associated with these domains, right? And ideally, then we're going to start working with IP addresses as well, and those IP addresses that can also be part of autonomous system numbers, which we're going to talk about if you're not familiar with the concept, right? All right. So we talked about reverse IP lookups, right, where it found like other domains. Here's the example for Floor where we might have 50 domains on a single IP address, right? But now let's look at another favorite tool, DNS Dumpster. I didn't come across this till, I don't know, probably 2.5 years ago, and I couldn't believe I hadn't heard about it before then. It's actually created by the folks at Hacker Target, and so we can go back and put in allstate.com as our target domain. And you can see it takes all of a few seconds to come back and create a list of, well, yeah, here's 100 hosts that we found. And then, oh, we found a couple hosts in Proofpoint, which we already saw earlier, right? And so, yeah, we see, again, there's the DNS records. We see, oh, there's their mail records, right, pointing to Proofpoint, right? We see a bunch of text records. So a lot of the times you can see the text records, if anything, can show relationships between one company and other companies. So you can see like Flexera is a product. So they use Flexera, probably FlexNet in some way, shape, or form, right? There's some tie-in with Apple, right? And so on and so forth, right? I think they use WebEx, right? So we have a lot of tie-ins with text records you can see. Not necessarily what we're looking for there, but it's all important information to have. What we're looking for from DNS Dumpster really is the host record. And we want to look for patterns as we're going through the page and looking in not only patterns in the host names, but also, and potentially other domain names, but also the IP addresses, on the right-hand side, the autonomous system. And now they're not showing us the number, but they're showing us the name that's associated with that autonomous system number, which again, we're going to come back and talk about in just one sec. But if I'm scrolling through, the idea is, I already see a pretty obvious pattern here, which is what? Yeah, I see Allstate Insurance Company, right? Everything ends in allstate.com. But what's in particular about the IP addresses?
They're all part of the same subnet.
They're all part of the same subnet. Yeah, they all, in this case, you can see there's 167.127.142, there's 167.127.130, right? So it looks like everything's starting with 167.127. So they might, especially as a large company, have a full class B range. But we can check that by, let's just take one of these IP addresses, go back to DNS Linux, which I'll go ahead and open it up in a different window. I can do a search. And then we go back to the who is information. The great information about the who is, not only tells us, sure, it's registered with this party, but it actually tells us, here's the net range that's associated with the ISP. And here in particular is the range that is assigned to the company. So yeah, so Allstate has an entire class B address. So you can have over 64,000 IP addresses that are possible in this range. This is just like Floor. We actually have a class B. Anytime you see anything that starts with 141.197, that's going to be a Floor. So we're going to take this IP range that we've confirmed, right? And just copy that for now, because we know anything in that range is associated with Allstate. And the kicker is, now let's see if we keep scrolling through the Allstate records. So Allstate actually is probably an interesting case study, because yeah, they really are. So what we kind of get into is this idea, everything that we see so far, except for their mail servers that are hosted, or at least we should say the email gateway, right? That's hosted as Proofpoint. It looks like everything else is hosted on the actual Allstate network. Now, there are going to be other hosts that are out there, and more than likely they are, because you can see by default, Hacker Target only will give you in DNS Dumpster 100 records. Now, the really cool thing is if you have used tools like Recon NG, Recon NG has a plugin called actual Hacker Target. And if you use it and you do this same query for allstate.com, it'll actually give you up to 500 hosts. So if you want more than that, you have to pay for it. So I guess I didn't stipulate the whole part of the QuickStart, whole point of the QuickStart Recon process is also using free resources, right? So we don't have to pay for any tools. But so in this case, you can see, right, that we have all of these resources that appear, again, on the surface, that they're all hosted on the Allstate network. I don't see any other cloud-hosted services like, a website that might be hosted, like Floor hosts, our main website, like at Akamai, right? So if somebody wanted to break into the Floor network, are they really going to target a web server hosted in Akamai? Probably not. They want to find those resources that are exposed and connected directly to the target network. So all of these could be, again, on the surface, these all look like they're attached to the Allstate network. And that's partly reconfirmed by what we call this autonomous system number. So I want to go back and look at this real quick, because you can see, oh, well, here's Akamai, and it has this ASN called 20940. Or yeah, Allstate has a ASN called AS11520. The thing is, and you see like Floor has an autonomous system number. Think of like a company like Floor, right? We're a global organization. We have IP addresses all around the world. We have 250 firewalls alone spread out around the world. And some of them, most of them are in the 141.197 range, but then there's others that are also in other ranges. And so what we can do is we can say that, hey, all of these IP addresses from all these different subnets belong to this one company called Floor. And so we pull them all together in one autonomous system number, right? Just at a high level for reconnaissance purposes right now. And so when we look at that ASN, right, that's specific to Allstate, any IP addresses or domain names that are associated with this autonomous system number belong to our friends at Allstate. And so then you can go back and now look at what we're finding. We're not only finding IP subnet ranges, right, that we saw earlier, like 167.127, but hey, we see, 12.26.124, and it's now it's slipped as answer financial. So then it's like, well, what's the tie-in there, right? That would be something worth investigating, right? We see Allstate, seeing if we see anything new, right? Oh, there's Answer Financial again, right? American Heritage Life. Is there a connection? Or maybe this is DNS Linux just screwing up, but there's probably a connection somewhere, right, that we need to verify. Like, let's verify that Answer Financial is in the same autonomous system number. And you can, it looks like it is. And so there's some, we probably look up that company, there's some connection to Allstate Insurance, right? So it could be another target for us in our penetration test. If your client didn't give it to you though as a target, right, make sure you get authorization from them before you start targeting them in your attack. So, all right. I just want to make sure we're on track for time as well. All right. So DNS Dumpster is a great utility, right? Though, so we can look for patterns. We can also, it'll identify, if there's cloud, hosted resources, that use an allstate.com domain, sure. And then, right, we can start looking at all the host names themselves. And so you can see like VAP 0120. Interesting. So there's some naming convention there that we haven't figured out yet, but because then we see VAP 0130, VAP 1240, right? They obviously mean something. Right? Then I see SBC lab test 40, right? We love to see lab or test right, connected to the internet because chances are those systems aren't as up to date as production systems. Right? We see OWA, blah, blah, blah. OWA, we typically start thinking of like Outlook Web Access, right? And maybe it is, maybe it's not. But then you can also see there's a SRO, there's a SHU, and then pull, right? So maybe, those are like location names or indicators. There's a pattern there, then we just have to decipher it. GD11, right? Gateway, maybe it's a VPN appliance, right? There's lots of interesting scenarios that we come up to see. And then we also see, right, some other names, right? We can sometimes also see, oh, there's a web server exposed. And then, oh, there's actually, here's an operating system or web server exposed, right? We see there's a big IP. Let's see what else, if there's any other more interesting findings here. Oh, there's Nginx, right, for s3.allstate.com. So that could bear further investigation. Here's SMTP3, right, a mail server probably. So after your email that you're sending to Allstate goes through Proofpoint, it's probably coming to one of these mail servers like SMTP3, which is hosted on the Allstate network. Again, which at least it appears to be hosted on the Allstate network, right? And so on and so forth. So we can look for, again, we're looking for those patterns, looking for those interesting names that would make interesting targets, right? Because it's all about finding those hosts and to find those services and applications running on those hosts, to then find vulnerabilities in those applications and services to exploit to gain access. And so again, we got 100, and again, that gave us a lot. If anything from this at a very high level, right, we found, we had 190 or 167.127. So the next place we would actually go then is one of my favorite places to go in the world is Showdown. And so we can log in. And then we can do a search once you have even a basic free account. Right? We can do a search for a net block. Like we found, Allstate has everything in 167.127. So we're telling Showdown, right, show me everything you know of in this range, because Showdown will scan, if you're not familiar, scans the entire internet. Now they only scan it for a couple of dozen ports. So they're not looking for all 65,535 TCP ports, which would take forever, but they're scanning for a couple of dozen ports. And so you can see in that one range that we were looking at, it found 1,224 hosts. So do you think as a penetration tester or as an attacker, if I had 1,224 hosts to choose from, we could find a vulnerability to exploit in that many hosts? Probably, right? Chances are, I mean, it's just a very large environment with a lot of hosts exposed to the internet. And the nice thing about Shodan, you can see it even gives us a breakdown of those top ports. And we can click on the more and it says, oh, okay, well, we see 765 web servers running HTTPS. There's 444 non-encrypted web servers. So could be interest, right? And there's probably a lot of overlap, right? A lot of these could redirect, right, to encrypted versions, right? We could see 4 mail servers, 4 DNS servers, 3 SSH. Are those admin interfaces that are exposed to the internet? Or maybe like, we got written up for a pen test one time that said we had a SSH interface to the internet, but they didn't look at it closely enough. It was actually an SFTP server that was exposed. But so something that we would look at, right? There's a FTP, like probably clear text, right? Plain text FTP servers. And then there's also 2 sites running on 8443, right? One of those alternate web server ports. So those would be also of interest for us to look at and see, hey, what's here? Right? And so we can go back and we also see, it can give us the products, right? Or like the web servers that are running those different websites. So we can look for things like older web servers, right? That might not have been patched. And we can start looking through the results to see if there's anything of interest that pops out. Again, looking for patterns, looking for keywords, right? Or names, right? I might look at this. Well, what the heck is this Life Fortress ES login? Sounds kind of interesting. So that might be something that's very relevant as an attacker, right? I can see, oh, it's an ASP.NET page. So it's going to be running, you can see IIS 10. So it's fairly up to date. So, but it still could be a web application I could target. And that we also, Shodan does this great job. It also pulls down the Ssl certificate on any encrypted sites. So now we see here's the certificate information. And now we see, oh yeah, here's the name for the site on the certificate. So we see all app client dot, and now, right, allstateatwork.com. So now there's another domain. And so then it just becomes a cyclical process, right? So we can go back to Dns Dumpster, right? And we can go take Allstate, state at work, right? Allstateatwork.com, right? And then run that search and then see now how many resources. Wow, there's like 25 that are out there, right? And so we can see, oh yeah, there's QC, so probably quality control. That's another one. It's like putting lab or test environment, right? Perf, right? Maybe like performance, right? And then, oh, not only we have perf.allstateatwork.com, but now we have perf.easybillonline. And allstatebenefits.com, right? So there's another domain, right? And so on and so on and so forth, right? So again, especially with those large companies, right? We never probably ever run out of things to test, right? We just run out of time. Right? But that's why we like to use the larger companies and probably the less exciting companies to do reconnaissance from that kind of that to learn at least the first time. Right. We can see here in this case, it looks like, oh, there's a FTP server, right, that's running at this IP address. And it even tells us in the banner, oh, well, here's right the type of FTP server. It looks like it's RoboFTP version 3.5. Right. So that might be something that we go to Google, right, and just type in software and exploit to see, is there, this is not Robo, right? So we have to make sure it includes, right? Is there a vulnerability associated with this software, right? And sometimes as attackers or pen testers, we get lucky and we find an exploit so that we could use it. Doesn't look like there is for that software, so good for Allstate. Otherwise, we'd probably have to send them an email. And so that's a whole part about this, the reconnaissance process and using just a few tools though to find, right, all the different resources we have exposed to the internet. We should do this for our own companies, if anything, to find what are the attackers looking at, right? We don't have a way almost ever to know if attackers are doing reconnaissance against our company, right? I don't know if somebody's using Google to find out information about Floor. But at the same time, I'll see what information about Floor is exposed through Google. One time I even one of the common queries we do is, Floor, confidential file type PDF. And what we found out was one of our potential clients that we had sent a 100-page proposal with engineering diagrams and cost and the proposed cost for this project, which was hundreds of millions of dollars. They had actually posted it in a directory on their company website that was actually being indexed by Google, along with all of the other proposals from all of the other companies bidding for that work. Like, oops. Or again, going back to when Chris's presentation talking about ransomware, right? The attackers are always continually looking for systems that are exposed to the internet and they're not protected and they're connected to your network. Like all of these are connected to the Allstate network, it appears. And all I have to do as an attacker is break into one of these systems. And then I have access to that entire network. And I get ransomware on one and ransomware on the other, right? Or now, right, they'll get on the network, they'll sit on one machine, stealthily gain access to the other one without deploying ransomware. Yeah, right, they're looking for the data, copying the data, exfiltrating the data, and then installing ransomware. And then if you don't pay them for the decryption key, then they come back and say, oh yeah, well, we also stole all of your information. Here's some samples. And if you don't want us to publish it to the entire internet, you still need to pay us, right? It's just that, evolving conversation. So we have to find out as ourselves, right? What do we have? Or again, if we're an organization and we're not performing this type of work and the reconnaissance against ourselves, you need to invest and pay someone like a pen testing consultant, right, to come in and do this for you, to understand where your exposures are and get those items fixed, right? Find the issues before the attackers do and get them fixed. I would say find the issues before the attackers or the auditors do, right? And get them fixed for sure. So, the other thing just to mention, just to kind of wrap up, that's interesting, if you haven't seen Shodan before, they also have a images section. So as they index the entire internet, you can see the two common things that pop up. Well, here's remote desktop, which give us a lot of great information because we can see things like, if we pull up one of these, right, we see that's not the one that they had indexed. You can see things like, or maybe it was, I just clicked on the wrong. You can see names, right, of users. Sometimes you can also see domain names. Right? Some of these you could see like 50 different accounts, which are crazy. And then you see webcams. And if you want to limit it, you can actually do something like, just HTTP. So that's going to be like all the webcams. And so you can see crazy things, right? So it's, maybe somebody at they have, maybe this almost looks like a pharmacy, right? And so they have a camera watching, maybe they don't trust the people behind the desk, right? So here's an interest, I don't know, if that's somebody's apartment or maybe office, right? I love when they have like the cameras where there's, multiple cameras that you can look from one interface. And the number of webcams is just exploding. Because another thing, I was maybe some type of industrial control environment, right? Here's some pylons you can see for offshore wind turbines, right? The other thing I'm always looking for is you can also find industrial control systems, going back to our earlier talk, that are actually exposed to the internet, where they have web page interfaces where you can control them that are exposed. You used to see them all the time. You don't see them. It could take a while to find one, not because they're being removed from the internet. It's just because the number of webcams is exploding. Here's one. But so not only do we have all these webcams and you can see, here's a church, right? Or maybe that's a synagogue or a mosque, but it's some type of place of worship, right? Someone's bedroom, that's always scary. And then, concerning is, what is this HMI doing connected to the internet? And even if it's in only read-only modes, I mean, is that a good thing to have exposed? Especially when I see things like oven control. I mean, this could be an oven. Maybe this is just at Panera Breads, right? Or what if this oven, right, is an oven that's 5 stories tall? Right? There's a difference, but from a control perspective, it looks the same. It's really interesting to see all the things that we can find on the internet, especially through Shodan, right? Oh, and it also has remote desktop open. Great. So this is an interesting one. I'll have to do a little bit more research on this one. But hopefully you get an idea with that QuickStart Recon process. We can use just a simple couple of sites, or starting with a main target site and using tools like DNS Dumpster and Dns Linux and Shodan to find all of the interesting hosts and services that are exposed to the internet, because those are the hosts and the services that the attackers are looking for. And we have to assume they're out there targeting us. And so we need to find those issues and those vulnerabilities before they do. I appreciate everybody for hanging out and taking the time to sit through the talk. I know we actually don't have a speaking slot in the position, so there's time for a couple questions if anybody has any questions. I haven't been keeping an eye on the track, but I appreciate again everybody for taking the time. So, all right. So with that, we'll call it an end, at least temporarily, for track 1. And then I'll definitely encourage you guys to go check out the talks in track 2, where we have PowerShell's return to power. And in the governance track, in track 3, there's Mr. Kirby's talking about using PCI as a general cybersecurity framework, which I think is a great idea, which I've preached about for many years, because especially for small, medium-sized businesses, it's a great platform for being able to allow those companies to get up and running with the cybersecurity program in a very probably simple, straightforward way. So a couple other great talks. So thanks, everybody. And hopefully we'll, not on one of the other tracks, we'll see you back here for the ransomware roundtable that will wrap up. And then hopefully over at Tipsy Taco, if you guys are in the area. So thank you again, and we'll see you guys over there. All right, bye.